Okay, thank you very much for coming to join us, and I'm pretty excited to be here. I have to tell you, though, last year I got involved with this through Rorik, who you might have heard from yesterday, and he invited me out to a session, and I said, Rorik, I'm a dryland farmer. Why do you want me to come to a water event? And he said, come on, you'll figure it out. So anyway, I've learned a lot about being called a dryland farmer. But here's my family, and I had to include 2 pictures because our family got bigger last year, and that is the first family picture that hasn't been on the farm. So we're going to have to incorporate my son-in-law next time on the farm. But we have 3 children, and you can see I'm in northeast Nebraska, so I'm about 2.5 hours from here. I'm half an hour west of the Missouri River. We are a typical Nebraska farmer: corn, soybeans, alfalfa, feed cattle. And makes us a little unique that I call myself a chicken farmer now. So some of you might have heard about the Costco project that came to Nebraska. My family and I added these barns that you see, and we are pullet growers. So we are raising the hens and the roosters that go on to lay eggs that hatch to become the broilers that show up in the stores. And we did that 4 years ago, and we did that so that we could bring the next generation back. As I say, the most important crop on our farm has been our kids, and we have the 3 of them, and 2 of them are back on the farm with us. As I said, I'm a dryland farmer, but I've been corrected that I'm a rain-fed farmer now. Somebody said, well, that means you get more? No. Dryland, rain-fed is the same thing. And in the climate smart world, no-tilling is the top item to do, and a lot of people think that's brand new. We've been no-tilling on our farm for over 40 years. And let me back up. My husband is a 5th generation on the farm that we live on. He is one of 4 boys, and so there's 4 families in our operation. We farm a little over 4,000 acres. So by Nebraska standards, each of our families are about average size farmers in Nebraska. I will call myself a small farmer because we have so many farmers that farm a lot more acres than we do. But you can see here in the field, we're putting corn into the bean stubble here. And we do run a 24-row planter, and that has created a lot of efficiency on our farm. But what I wanted to point out is that, we are at the Water for Food project, but there are more dryland acres than irrigated acres in our country. And so here's nationally in Nebraska. And within Nebraska, more than half the acres are irrigated, but 42% of us are not. And so as we talk about technologies, we also need to talk about technology that doesn't include water. Somebody asked me, well, are you thinking about adding irrigation? Our wells are 750 feet deep on our farm, and they produce about 20 gallons a minute. So that will never work for a pivot. Here's corn production based on irrigated and dryland, and obviously it produces far more bushels than us dryland farmers. And so again, I think there's a lot of opportunity through technologies outside of irrigation. That is an amazing tool that we have here in Nebraska, but we also need to talk about the other things that are available. And so we're pretty excited about what we do on our farm in the climate smart world of no-till, cover crops. But the most important thing is about making sure that these 3 kids get to come back and do it again. Thank you, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Debbie. Up next will be Martine Pasman.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Really, in the year 1994, I was working as an agriculture consultant in Argentina, and I have the chance to travel to Nebraska for 1 week, and after that, my life changed. I fell in love with the center pivot irrigation. At that moment in Argentina, there were very, very few. When I'm talking about few systems, maybe 10 or 20, no more than that. So I began to be dating with the pivot, and for 25 years I developed the pivot industry in Argentina. So we have today around 700,000 hectares that, well, we work a lot to do that. So by the side of doing that, I am a fifth generation farmer. So I was farming too. So developing the irrigation and farming. For me, what it is to be a farmer, what it is to be a fruit producer, it is someone that captures the energy of the soil, capture the CO2 from the air, use the water from the aquifer or the rain or from where it is, and to produce food. This is the amazing thing of being a farmer, of being a food producer. In my case, we farm around 15,000 hectares. Sorry, I'm talking in hectares and not in acres. 15,000 hectares. With that, I produce food to feed more than 500,000 people all the year. It is something that, as farmers, we never do that much, those numbers. It is amazing the amount of calories that we can produce and the amount of people that we can feed with that. I am from Argentina, the southest country in South America. In Argentina, we have 1/3 that what it is known as the Pampas, where we have enough rains for crops. We have a farm there in the middle, where I cannot point it, that it is rain-fed with around 30 inches of rain per year. Then we have 4 farms in the area that it is very arid area. It is the same like what it is here in Nebraska, where we have 2 farms with 20 inches of rain and 1 farm, 2 more farms with 12 inches of rain. What I am passionate, what I learned to do here in Nebraska, it is to transform land, to find land, pieces of land where we have very low productivity, 1 cow in 10 hectares, 1 cow in 20 hectares, as in Patagonia, to put a center pivot, Nebraska brand center pivot, to transform that land to produce food, to create value. That it is what I learned and what I'm trying always to copy and paste of what I am seeing here. Here are the pictures of 3 of the farms. One it is in San Luis province, Cordoba, Western Cordoba, and Patagonia. With full of center pivots, we work with 65 pivots. The sources of water that we use in Patagonia, this is a canal that takes water from the Rio Negro River that has 900 cubic meters per second, that river. And then in Cordoba and San Luis, we use underground water from the aquifer with 400 cubic meters, something around 1,800 GPM of water for the pivots. What crops we produce? Under irrigation, wheat, corn, potatoes, onions, a little bit of soybean, and some alfalfa. In the rain-fed farm, with those 30 inches, we produce corn, soybean, wheat, peanuts, and sunflower, and also cattle in the lowlands. What are our tools? What tools we use to improve water use and agricultural productivity? My 4 key things, technologies, are irrigation, no tillage. We have in the rain-fed farm around 35 years of no tillage. In the farms with irrigation, we have 4 or 5 years without no tillage, and we break the tillage for produce potatoes once in those 4 or 5 years. GMO crops, I think it is another important tool for us. And rotation, what I call rotation, it is the different crops that we produce, cover crops or double cropping. Mostly, I would say that 60% without Patagonia, all the other areas, we can produce 2 crops per year. In the rain-fed farm, we do not have enough rain for 2 crops, So we produce only one part. But under irrigation, it is mostly in double cropping. So a picture of my family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. We'll move on now to Abraham Salomon. You can sit right there.
Okay, thank you everybody. I'm Abraham Salomon. Originally from US, from Wisconsin, but live in Uganda. Basically, we work with smallholder farmers to do affordable irrigation. The great majority of the farmers that we work with irrigate. Pretty much you can just imagine the opposite of what you've just seen. They have 1 to 2 acres, mostly growing a wide variety of crops, so everything from bananas to sweet potatoes, maize, beans, soya, and very many others. When it comes to dry season, really the main focus is vegetables, so these are mostly tomatoes, cabbages, and onions. But when it comes to rainy season, it's a wide variety. But also being in Uganda, like everybody else, I also have to do some farming myself. I think our friend said that in Patagonia, it's about 1 cow to 20 acres. At least for my farm, at least we have about 3 cows to 6 acres, so it's a little bit better than that. But also do some horticulture, some tomatoes, ginger, and other things as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, now we'll introduce you guys to Bayron Alejandro.
Hello, my name is Bayron Cazún. I am from El Salvador, Central America. I work on a company called RainDrop. It's a company that brings services on consulting, research, and restoration. And also we bring technical assistance to farmers. And currently we have a project with around 60 farmers. So we teach them about water and soil conservation practices. And they produce corn. Primarily they produce corn and beans. So, and we try to keep it simple. We try to teach about, first about 2 practices, cover crops, and 4R, for recommendation about fertilization. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
And now to Louise Mabulo.
Thank you so much. So hi everyone, my name is Louise. I presented a little bit of my work yesterday at the keynote, but if you weren't there, I work in the Philippines with smallholder farmers to build sustainable and resilient agroforests through cocoa. So we grow cocoa, but it's not limited to chocolate. It's also through agroforestry systems. So we grow bananas, coconut, okra, eggplants, all sorts of different vegetable crops as well. And we are primarily rainwater fed. And recently I'd completed my National Geographic grant, which is through rainwater collection and finding low-cost ways to help farmers collect rainwater in our region, which is one of the heaviest rainfall regions in the country, and be able to save that because we also experience droughts on the other side of it. So really climate resilient agroforestry systems and how we can work with nature to reduce our input, but also finding ways to create practical innovations that farmers, and especially smallholder farmers, can find that are accessible to them, and really transition previously monoculture farms into regenerative models. We currently work with over 200 farmers. We've planted over 100,000 trees and work across 9,000 hectares of land, but given interventions to about 150 hectares worth of that. And really similar to the previous 2 speakers is finding these practical solutions that are on the ground, not as industrial or large scale, but easier for us to work with, and a big focus as well on young people and getting them involved into agriculture. So that's a little about me.
Wonderful. Now this is your chance. We have some amazing panelists up here, so this is your chance to step up to the mic and ask your questions. But I'm going to kick it off before anybody walks up to the microphone to ask, from each one of you, what is being done in farming and water use that you feel you personally could share with the world to benefit food production growth while still saving on water? So who would like to go first? Okay.
For me, I would say that irrigation plus no-tillage farming, it is an amazing tool. With no-tillage, we can reduce the use of water in between 15–20% of the amount. So it is a huge amount of water for rain-fed farming or for irrigation, no, for both. So why? Because we improve the infiltration of the water the rain of the water that we apply. So I think that it is an amazing tool. It improves the soils because all all that carbon that we're sequestrating through photosynthesis from the air, we are putting it into the soil. So for next generation, it is improving the soil, growing the organic matter of the soil. So no tillage for me plus irrigation. Why irrigation? Because I am in areas that I cannot produce without water, or in the areas that I have rain also. It is a continuous improving of the soil. So I do not call regenerative farming. I call it continuous improving of what we are doing.
Anybody else?
Sure, I can just talk from the perspective of East Africa. So in terms of water saving, of course, technologies such as drip are always the ones mentioned. But actually from our experience, when we see waterways getting dry, especially in the dry season, I think the big culprit is farmers making river diversions and taking water in canals to their fields. So actually I think that pumping of water, whichever kind of pump you want to talk about, whether it's solar pumps or diesel or anything else, in itself is a great improvement over what a lot of farmers are doing, which is just putting some sandbags in the river and some sticks across and taking all the water somewhere else, and everyone else downstream doesn't get it.
For me, I think the ground cover, especially in critical moments before rainy, if we advise farmers to cover the soil before rainy seasons, the soil will be prepared to the RainDrop impacts, and it will permit to the soil maintained conserve the soil conservation and avoid the soil erosion and runoff. So I think to maintain the soil protected, for me, it's really important.
Yeah, essentially I'm just echoing everything that everyone said. It's always the simplest solutions, whether it's mulching, protecting soil, having that kind of cover, and really protecting your soil quality and improving moisture retention. It's why agroforestry is really important to us, because building good root systems, protecting soil biodiversity is just incredibly valuable, and just doing that is just a practical solution that I think is a parallel across different parts of the world.
I would just add, adding or making sure that we continue to work on the technology of the seed. We had a severe drought in 2012 here, and also we had a pretty bad drought last year, and our yields were twice in 22 what they were in 12, and I don't think we had any more water. And so the improvement in the seed genetics, I think, is amazing, including no-till for us is a game changer in our area.
Any questions yet from those in the audience? I see a lot of heads shaking in agreement. So let me go on to ask, where would you like to go in the world to share your water knowledge? You guys all have got, the world is your oyster, the opportunity to travel. Where's the one country or area you would like to go to further educate the world of agriculture and the consumers?
I think I can take that. I've been the world over, and I realize there's so many lessons to learn from different people. And I feel like a lot of knowledge systems are unique to different regions. So there's more that I can learn from them than they could possibly learn from me. But I want to get deeper into look more internally into my own country, because I work in one region of my country. But there are so many different parts of the Philippines that have their own indigenous knowledge, but also could just benefit from more practical knowledge of systems that we've already done and say, oh, this is happening in our part of the world. Maybe you can also apply it in the Philippines, in the northern Philippines, or in the southernmost areas. It's just really looking within my own country and being able to give those interventions, knowing that practical knowledge like this exists. And if they can do it in my region, why can't we do it in other parts and provinces?
Do you see that work going on right now, though?
I see that work slowly happening. Many different municipalities and provinces come to the agriforest that we're cultivating just to study and learn what we're doing. And it's just like a practical way that this knowledge, this research has been done, and it's low cost. All you have to do is visit us and hear our stories.
I think that's an invite.
It is an invite. You're all welcome to come by.
All right, anybody else would like to comment about where you'd like to go?
I would say sub-Saharan Africa. I think that there is, having been in this conference for many years and knowing and traveling and talking, having breakfast today in the morning, I think that there is a lot of knowledge that we can share and give and receive from Africa, saying like Argentina, Brazil are not so different in weather and in conditions. So I think that there is a lot of knowledge that we can share and learn from them and give from us.
And we've seen the change. You were talking about the seed genetics and what we're starting to see in those areas where the genetics have changed enough to allow for crops to grow in such dry areas that never would have happened before.
Well, for me, it is amazing that in Africa, the GMO crops are not approved. I am a GMO fanatic. I think that it helps us as growers to produce more food and in a more safety way, using less chemicals. So I think that decision of not approve them, it is more political than economics or for health. So again, it's my position as farmer. But well, I am an agronomist, agriculture engineer, so I know a lot about that. So I think for me it's amazing that they're not approved. In Africa, I think that they are moving, some countries are changing that. Well, I hope they will change for the best of the humanity.
Byron, I see you kind of shaking your head in agreement.
Yeah, I think he's right about, the politics in Africa has been quite negative towards GMOs. There are a few countries, I think, which are now changing on that. Kenya recently, I think, looks to be changing the policy. But I think he's right. The vast majority is still, due to the messaging of, other groups which are against GMOs, I think has had a lot of influence there.
I have never thought about that question, but I will say, I think, in my country first, because there are so many farmers that need to know about soil and water conservation, and then I think in our region, Central America.
I would have to agree. I would stay in the United States, and I would wish that we could talk to more consumers and share what we're doing on the farms and what GMO has done for all of us and for all of humanity to feed more. So how do we get that story out to share the amazing things that's happening with the technologies that we have?
All right, so we have a question from the audience.
I'm Nicola Four. I'm both a farm kid and a researcher, social scientist in agricultural water. And I work a lot in sub-Saharan Africa and have worked on conservation agriculture, which is often now considered no-till, mulching, regenerative agriculture. And in most African countries, it's very difficult to achieve a change in practice. There's practical constraints and there is sort of historical or cultural practice constraints. So I was interested to hear from those here from America, for Latin America, who are using no-till, if you had any barriers, if you had any challenges, or what the process was like for changing those practices.
I'm not sure I understand the question correctly, but how do we get more farmers to do no-till? So it's funny because my husband and I have been talking about this the last couple weeks because we call it recreational tillage when they're out there tilling, and we can't understand why. But I do have some family. Well, my son-in-law is on a large farm, and they are starting some no-till themselves, and so it's a real mind shift, and I wish we had the answer. I serve on the Nebraska Corn Board, and it's a question we ask often. And it's like, how do we communicate? How do we share those? So I don't have an answer except for, I think somebody said earlier today, farmers learn best by looking over the fence. And I know that is making changes, and with droughts more often, I think that's happening. You know, they're like, well, I'll give it a try. So I don't think that really answers it, but it's a $1 million question.
Well, I agree. What I said today, it is much more easier to get into no-till farming than it was 40 years ago or 35 years ago when it was in our case. I think that may be to be a problem of scale. Again, we were talking at breakfast today, small farmers, mechanization, no-till, you need mechanization. But well, in Brazil there are small farmers that are in no-till with one row planter by horsepower, not by a tractor, so by blood power, what's that? So we can do it. We have to find what technology, spraying. When it is no tillage, you use more chemicals and more if you are not GMO crops. But well, so there is all that technology around that you need all those herbicides, insecticides, but more herbicides that in the other case perhaps they plowed or they put something to take out mechanical all the weeds. But well, I think that it is a change that it must happen, and it is amazing. The growing production, it is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably just elaborate more on, I think, what Nicole was asking, which is why is it so hard for smallholders in Africa? I mean, I think it's just, like you said, I mean, it's not mechanized, everything is done by hands, and the big issue is weed control. So the major reason people plow is to control weeds, and especially if you don't have specialized herbicides for that specific crop you're growing. So most crops, we don't have any selective herbicides for them. And a lot of farmers don't know how to use pre-emergent herbicides or how to at least apply them. The typical ones are just glyphosate, which you can spray before planting, but I mean, once you've planted the crop, I mean, getting rid of weeds is a serious problem. Another thing is with retention of the residues is also quite difficult, often because people want to use the residues for livestock feed, but also because of termites in many places. Whatever you leave on the ground, and come back in 2 weeks and there will be nothing left. So I think there are a number of challenges. Labor is a major factor, but also the knowledge of really, it's not just how to plant, but I mean, you really have to have a full knowledge of, you know, from year to year, every month of the year, how you're going to be managing that field, and it's quite a learning curve compared to what people have been doing.
I will just share that Nebraska, I think, is leading the United States in no-till acres. Kelly, I'm looking for agreeance here. So we do have a lot of no-till acres in Nebraska, and we're pretty proud of that.
So I would like to, go back 25 years when my father-in-law in northern Wisconsin was no-tilling for the first time. And you talk about learning across the fences and the number of farmers that showed up to the university's field days because they were like, what is he doing? Why is he planting in a field that he didn't disc up the year before? So I know we've got a question from the audience, but I want to ask real fast. Do any of you see yourselves as trendsetters? Not at all. All right.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I make farming look fun and groovy and fabulous to get more young people in it, but in terms of trends, agricultural practices have been around for a long, long time. It's just a matter of being that young person to carry the torch forward and preserve that knowledge, or make that knowledge more well known and make it trendy, but it's not a new trend.
Very well put. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for being here today. This is always my favorite session of this conference. And today, Cindy was asking me what the tie meant. And this tie is my father's tie from the equivalent of the county fairs in Scotland from 1812 when they first had a county fair. So I wanted to, just to show my this is my credibility, but I'm the black sheep of the family. I didn't become a farmer. My question to you, you've been listening to all the various presentations, you've been seeing this diversity of thought around water and agriculture. What would you like to have us do collectively? What do you think in 5 years' time, if you come back here, what would you like to be doing differently in terms of the research, the practice, the crop breeding? In agriculture broadly, but if you can specifically in water and agriculture, what would you like to see from this collective to help you on the cold face of agriculture and the food system?
You got them thinking.
I think we all need a minute. But I think 3 things that come to mind right now is number 1, more on circular economy models. Perhaps unique circular economy models from around the world that might be very region specific and niche that we don't get to talk about as well. Another thing is we talk a lot about regenerative farming practices and the technologies around it, but how do we marry technological and biological solutions within agricultural spaces and in a way that's more democratized towards smallholder farmers like us? And another thing, afraid to be the controversial person in the room, but really diversity. Having more conversations with both economic diversity, but also age diversity, having more young people. Hopefully I won't be the young kid on the panel and you'll have more younger generations in it. And also just like the different practices that we tend to see, whether it's indigenous practices or super cool, large-scale technological solutions of smartphones and satellites. I think having those conversations and finding the common ground between them and the challenges and disparities and gaps would be incredibly awesome, and I'd love to see more of those.
I would say that Norman Borlaug, huge difference between him and me, no? Take it to the farmer. Try to do things to reach the farmer and to push them to copy, to learn, to find a way to do things. So to go more to the farm level or to get down to the farm level to make the changes all around the world at the farm level. So I would say that it is something that the Water for Food Institute must try to do, or in my thoughts, no? Try to reach the farmer. There is an amazing knowledge in these 3 days here, all sharing, and well, I think that to try to, there are a lot of efforts of doing that, but well, my dream it is to try to do it more and to reach the farmers and to make that change at the farm level all around the world, no? There is amazing what I said. I learned here from 1994 up to today. I traveled 2-3 times to the States, mainly Nebraska, to learn, to see what they are doing. I would say copy and paste. Today it is, well, I bring a lot of technology that I am doing in Argentina and sharing here with the farmers. Well, a close friend of Rorik, we exchange information. So I think that will happen in all the world if we can go more to the farm level.
I would echo, I'm terrible with names, how do we involve more young people? So that's been a passion. I didn't state it up front, but I did say, I have said since I got involved, and the reason I got involved in ag leadership was because of some social issues that were coming, and I wanted to make sure that my kids would be able to farm, and somebody needed to step up and serve. And that's how I got involved in leadership. But the most important thing on our farm is that the next generation is able to farm if they want to. And all 3 have raised their hand and they want to farm. That's a challenge for us now because we have to grow big bigger to make room for 3 more, and that's a real challenge. So how do we involve more young kids, giving them the opportunity? And I would also say we need their help in how to communicate what we're doing. And we have to make room for them at the table. We may not always agree with how they think or what they say, but we have to have them at the table. And I will be very honest, my daughter gets discouraged more often than not sometimes. She may not be invited to the table, and if she is, she's not respected, and that's a problem. And so how do we bring the diversity in and accept it and recognize it? And we also have to hope that they understand there's a lot of wisdom and helping them to learn. So how do we get the next generation more involved, I guess is my question of what I would like to see in 5 years.
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, I would continue what the Institute is already doing, because I think I'm really surprised by what's going on. And for example, to see similar to the work that we've been doing in Uganda for a while now, and thinking we're the only ones doing it and thinking about it, and coming here and realizing that it's something that others are also working on. So I would say that it's really great to focus on these new ideas, things that maybe aren't the traditional way of doing things, and some of them will work and some of them won't. But I mean, there was a time when conservation tillage was also considered strange, and now it's the norm, right? So I think that being at the front end of these kind of ideas and really trying to push it forward and do more research on it, as well as bring it to the attention of more people at the higher levels.
I will just add that I would like to have more young people involved on agriculture and technology. I think young people, with no offense, it's easier for us to use technology, to get involved in technology. So we need to take advantage of young people that is interested in agriculture and technology and use that. Just that.
Kelly.
Thank you all for coming here, and I think it's a great opportunity to open up discussions. My question is, I think you've talked about a lot of opportunities. My question is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you foresee in the future, and specifically through the lens of creating conversations of how we can work together, whether it be through a regulatory environment, production, research, to where we can create those conversations where we can address them together across many countries.
Another thinker.
Can you clarify a little bit the question?
Sure. Kelly, you want to?
Or in a summary.
Can you summarize a little bit what you would like them?
I cannot hear very well, sorry.
Okay. I'll speak up a little bit too. My question generally is, what challenges do you see upcoming in the future where we can create conversations and to address them together across countries?
Well, I begin. I think in our case in Argentina, the challenges that are coming, but not in the short term, are more problems of water. Today we have few irrigation, so we have a lot to grow. So I was talking about a river with 900 cubic meters per second, and we are using, I would say, less than 1/3 of the amounts that we can use. So we have a lot of years to grow up to that moment. But it is something that we are learning from here, what it is happening here, pollution of water, quality, nitrogen, all those things. We do not have those problems. But well, we are learning and trying to move in front of the problem, to not to get into the problem. It is to learn from your learning curve and try to do the change that we have to do before. I think that those are what may happen with us. In crops, we are 90% of the country is in no-till. So with that, it's not a problem. But well, in the use of water and chemicals and all that world. It's something that the market it is asking, so it is something that we have to be aware and begin to study and make the changes before we have the problem.
I'm not sure that this fits quite right, but I had this conversation with Peter last night. Water for food has brought a lot of people together, but what if we called it water for food and nutrition? Because I believe that a lot of people think about agriculture, but they don't connect that to food. I don't know why, but when we say agriculture, they won't always think food. And so if we could say water for food and nutrition, when we talk about, if we could bring nutrition into the conversation, maybe we would have a larger gathering, or we would help people understand the connection between farming and the food. Random idea.
Thanks so much. So I'd love to piggyback off of that idea, because there was 3 points I was writing down with challenges. One of them is the climate crisis. I was recently in Australia, and I learned about how forest fires and changes in weather are impacting the way we're growing food, and even the way food tastes, or where we're able to grow certain regions, how we harvest crops. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that do need to be addressed. Another side is policy and agriculture reforms, and how we're kind of approaching agriculture from different silos. And that comes to my third point, which is we need to have conversations about how we're having these conversations. And this is incredible, having this space where we actually get to have these chats and have these different, this conference in itself is already a way of breaking down these silos and talking to different industry people, and it's incredible. But is that the only pathway? Are there other ways that we can bring in, as you mentioned, nutrition, climate, natural resources, and conservation, and break down these different divides between different agricultural industries? Because when I first got into this, I came from culinary, and then I got into agriculture, and then I got into environment, and people were like, how are these all related? And they're naturally related. I mean, agriculturists are some of the best land stewards across the world. And if it's not for agriculture, we won't have food, and we won't have nutrition. And because of climate, it's impacting nutrition, because growing cycles aren't giving us the proper nutrition we need during the right times of year that we need it. Whether that's having vitamins and iron deficiency because a typhoon had hit my town, and the things that need to be growing and I need to be eating in this time of year, I'm not able to consume. So really breaking down those silos and having these conversations with different industry people, but also being able to communicate with, other people in different industries that may not seem totally related, whether that's in policy, whether that's in even lumber and entertainment, and understanding that all of these different industries have something to connect with us. So also not alienating anyone else who might be considered completely foreign or weird or even destructive to agricultural industries, but taking them into the fold and having conversations with them as well about where we can find common ground and understanding.
All right, another question from the audience, please.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things that I've heard come up in this conference, but also in my hometown, which is in rural Wisconsin, is that farmers very often feel like they're not heard, especially among governments or perhaps the donor community. As a member of the donor community, I have some degree of self-awareness that oftentimes the donor communities aren't really aligned or have their own agenda or aren't really listening to farmers. So I guess my question is to you, what do you think, or if you could wave a magic wand and make the donor community listen to you, what would be the one or two things that you would say that you need to focus more on? Or, if you're going to do one thing, do this one thing. Does that make sense? And maybe this has come up in different ways throughout the conversation, but feel free to repeat yourselves if it's necessary.
They would like you to summarize it a little bit again, please.
Yeah. Message to a donor community, like USAID.
Can you
I'm
define
with
donor?
I'm with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. I guess mostly, I guess it's for more the international participants. USAID, World Food Program, Millennium Challenge Corporation, these donors that are funding these international ag-oriented initiatives. Do you see any problems with them, or would you say, hey, you're focused on the wrong thing, focus on this other thing? Did the question make a little more sense this time?
Sure, I can just mention some ideas. So I think one of the issues we see is, I mean, from the kind of organizations you just mentioned, they're a long way from the ground, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of intermediaries before any funds that they give get down to the farmer level, right? And there's a lot of reporting that goes up along the way, and the reality gets obscured. So I think that, again, I understand administratively it's hard, but ways of actually getting funding much closer to the people that are actually on the ground working with farmers is really important. And whichever ways of doing that, yeah, should be explored.
Sorry, I don't want to hog the mic too much, but one thing it's very broad, but is visibility. Oftentimes the people who need funding the most don't get to the platforms or the spaces where the funders actually are. So how do we kind of address visibility as the only answer to finding solutions or creating positive change, especially transitions in farming and agriculture? And as you mentioned, there are oftentimes the people on the ground who aren't who are part of these systems that don't get to funding spaces or get to meet donors or even get to these conference halls. So finding solutions to visibility as the only answer of getting the right funding, of implementing the right projects is something we need to really discuss and talk about.
All right, Nate.
Sorry, somebody put this microphone way too high. Well, visibility is a really good jumping off point for the question that I have. My name is Nate Bloom. I'm the executive director, actually CEO of Sorghum United, which is an international NGO that, to your points, is really focusing on how to improve health outcomes, environmental outcomes, and economic prosperity through the usage and promotion of sorghum and millets, okay? The question I have, and actually I wanted to ask Beth this last night or yesterday afternoon, but I didn't have time to do so, was, there are those of us within the industry and our stakeholders that are located on every continent around the world that we can beat the drum as hard as we want, right? But it really comes down to consumer demand for markets development for these products, and we're small fish. So to your point of visibility, and especially as a chef even, I would direct this maybe at you, is, how do we approach the Land O'Lakes of the world or the TikTok influencer of the hour or whoever? How do we get those people to help us tell the story, which frankly, regions like India, West Africa, they already get it, right? So we're talking about water for food, we're talking about water conservation, but we need to also be talking about including, not replacing, but including crops in our cropping systems that use a third of the water of some of our more conventional crops. So with that, I'll leave it for you, unless you need clarification.
Yeah, oh gosh, so many points, and my pen broke, so I can't jot them down into bullet points. But on that point, I love to advocate how individual behavior can kind of, inform producers and create demand for what's right. So we need, number one, environmental psychology and shortening the gap between producers and consumers and actually showing people this is how food gets to your plate, and having that understanding of where ingredients come from and how they get to you, and making people more conscious of the things that they consume so that you drive demand for local, for sustainable, and for better options. And another part of it is just really policy as well, making sure that you include environmental psychology. So when you go to a grocery store and the thing in front of you are always the mass industry produced foods, how do you get it to local farmers? How do you get local producers as the thing that you immediately see? Is the more easy thing to purchase and buy, the the sustainable option, making it the thing that's also the easiest, most affordable option, and changing that psychology too. So that's approaching food systems, approaching policy. And I see you have a follow-up question, so I'd love to make this a two-way discussion.
Well, only because there's no one behind me in line. To your point, you're absolutely right, and that is a great way to help with consumer demand. Now, one thing that sorghum, for example, has going for it is, 5 years ago, when I became the Nebraska Sorghum Board Director, maybe 1 out of 10 people knew what sorghum was. Now, the industry's made great strides, and now 3 out of 10 know what sorghum is. So, I mean, it's even more simple than the environmental psychology of where you place things and things like that. It's truly a lack of awareness. I mean, the number one question that we get globally is, what is sorghum? Or what are millets? And consumers can't begin to demand a product if they don't know that it exists. And so that's the question, is how do we help to tell that story? Because we can improve the environmental outcomes of climate-smart crops, and farmers will grow them if they can make a profit. But we need also then the markets development to reach the farmers.
I love that question, because that's where youth come in, and that's my role as a young person. How do you make those concepts trendy? How do you bring them up to social media? Especially in like the Philippines, moringa was something that grew wild everywhere. No one paid attention to it. And then out of nowhere, it became this nice, trendy health food. And that was very much driven by, social media influencers and people saying, this is a cool new thing that you should definitely be doing. So get more young people involved and having them understand that and maybe talk about it. How do we make farming and maybe sorghum cool and trendy, and millets? And I see campaigns on Twitter actually about how UNCCD is doing work with that.
So third question then is, how do I be cool?
Work with us young people, I guess. We're pretty trendy. We have a good pulse on it. Or hang out with more of us and see different marketing campaigns. Because on one side, marketing is a big part of agriculture, and packaging things to make them accessible too, or visually pleasing. It's design of packaging, it's how you reach markets, it's how you communicate these scientific and agricultural concepts in a storytelling, trendy way that young people can relate to. How do you make it more relatable is the question.
This is a question directed to Ms. Borg. She asked a very good question about diversification and how does her daughter have power at the table. Well, that's actually a two-part response. Number one, how you establish your estate plan is absolutely essential. I saw the photo of your family. There are 2 girls there and 1 male. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how you fashion your estate plan is extremely important. I'm from a family of 3 girls, so that was a little bit easier. Number 2, your daughters need to be better educated than the male people sitting at the table. The better educated she is, the more power she'll have. And eventually, they will listen to her. It worked for me, and it works. You just have to be better at what you do. So it's going to be easy for them if they know how to do it.
So what is your question?
No, your question was, how does my daughter have the power to sit at the table? And I answered that for you. In my impression, it's twofold. So have you done those things?
So she is educated. Both my daughters have a 4-year degree. My son does not. And, she is at the table and she's bold enough to be there when, and so it just takes continuous encouragement. And I don't want to just single out my one daughter. But I've been in agriculture my whole life, and when I came to Nebraska, I went to work for a seed sales company. I was one of 2 females for the whole company across the United States out in the field. And so honestly, this is a kind of a sensitive topic, but I've been listening to stories in the last couple years that really frustrate me, because those are the battles I fought 30 years ago, and I thought that we were over them, and we're not. And so I just had this conversation with my daughter last week. I says, you just got to continue to be bold and show up. And they are. They're very strong.
But have better ideas. I mean, she's got to pursue it.
She is. I mean, she loves the farm. She's back on the farm with us, and I don't think I shared this. So the oldest is back on the farm. Her and I have been managing the chickens. 4 years ago, I couldn't have left the farm, but we've got it under control now, and she can do it. So anyway, and she's pursuing some things on her own too. But to the young women listening, it's still hard. But being bold and showing up and being at the table, it does work. You just have to keep at it. Thank you for your comments.
So we've got time for probably one more question. We could probably go another hour, but I think it's us between reception. So go ahead.
So hi, just my point about what you say about the education. I'm just doing my master's as a woman, and I think that get the education is one point. But as a woman, an international person, I think we need to have our voice. If with education or without education, we just need to be heard. So getting a table and get the fluid conversation, is that what we wanted? And as a new generation as well, I think we needed to get the convincing that get acknowledgement is not just difficult or for people that has money or people that it's like have someone that can guide you. You just need to think that you have that opportunity and go ahead. Because I'm from Brazil, I come from a really difficult place. Like I studied in a public school and now I'm here doing a master's. So as a younger person, I never think that I will be here talking to people like you guys. So just thinking that we are able to and we can do it, even with our international black or woman. We just need to raise our voice and talk, is my opinion.
Thank you. Well, thank you to everybody who asked questions and made comments from the audience. I think we'll give you guys just a few moments to share some final thoughts. And Louise, we'll start with you.
I guess just final thoughts is it's really fantastic to be here and just speaking to all of you and hearing from your experiences. I think there's a lot of things that I can definitely take home. And it's always a two-way learning street. So it's one thing to be sad in front of everyone and talking on this panel, but this whole conference, I've been writing down nonstop notes. And one thing that I hope you can all take away from me is just being able to break down those silos and think outside of the box when it comes to farming and food systems and open yourself up to different ideas and hopefully work with more young people. It's that's my perspective as the young person on the panel.
Well, thank you. It was an honor to be part of this panel, and I think in the whole world there are so many people that needs help, and each of one can help. No matter it's a small action, a big action, everybody here can help a neighbor or a person. So, and I think in talking about agriculture, we really need to have a view from the field to understand what's happening on the farm with farmers and their family. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the main thing I would just like to say is a big thank you for this conference and how it was organized and the number of people who have attended. And it's been such a diverse group of experiences. I mean, personally, I've learned a lot, especially hearing from the farmers in Nebraska talk about their issues, which totally different than what we deal with, but it's extremely interesting, and I'm very grateful that all of this is able to come together.
For me, it's as usual, this panel, it is amazing to have different voices, different countries, different ages, different continents, different problematics, different. So that brings a lot of value to this conference. So it's for me, it's excellent to be here to share the knowledge and to talk with all. And I think as farmers, we have to use our voice to tell what we are doing, to teach the people what we are doing, that we are for the people that go to a grocery to buy something, we are the enemy. And no, we are not the enemy. We are feeding them every day. So it's the story that we have to tell every day. It will be great if we can talk like her, but not. We do not have that marketing expertise, but well, I hope I will learn for next conference to talk better. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a real privilege to have been asked and to be the U.S. farmer here. And it's been a lot of fun getting to talk to people from other countries and learning more. But as a Nebraskan, and I am a transplant, but a very proud Nebraskan, I'm so glad that you guys all got to come to Nebraska. And I always say that our farm gate is open. So if you ever have the opportunity to come back, look me up, because we love to share the story on our farm. And we know that for consumers, that is a game changer when we can bring people to the farm so they can see what we do. And I hope that we have more young people come. But I would encourage all of us older ones to make sure we're mentoring. Everybody needs to do that. And there's a lot of people that I think have time to do that, or we all need to make time. So I encourage all of us older ones to be mentoring and bring some young one along each time we go somewhere. So thank you all for coming to Nebraska and allowing me to be here to share our little story on our farm.
Well, thank you to our panelists for coming and sharing your story. And for those of you that are in the audience and those that are watching virtually as well, I think it's a time for us to take on the challenge to be able to continue to tell the story and find ways to explain what happens in the farming operation, no matter what your generation is. Because really, without it, we would not have anything to eat, we would not have anything to wear, and the world and society that we live in would collapse. So with that being said, thank you to you guys for telling your story. Thank you for you guys being in the audience as well. And I wish everybody safe travels home and enjoy the rest of the conference. And Peter, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Susan. I just want to say to the panel, thank you for being so open and sharing your family and your insights into what you do. And again, just a pleasure to listen to you all. So just one more round of applause for the panel, please. As we've heard, we've got many challenges still to address in water and food security, but again, with farmers like this, certainly with more youth and more women involved in the cohort that comes here and gets engaged, but also is active in the field doing so. This is what we all now have to strive for. So you've laid the challenge out there. We need to bring in nutrition into the conversation, and I could see others nodding vigorously when that was raised by Debbie. So definitely we hear that, and that's certainly something that we want to help promote. I'm sure we've had the negatives, we've had the positives. I think, again, coming out of this last couple of days, very encouraged. Again, very big challenges, but we've looked at this from a very high level to down into the soil. I won't say the dirt. That's not an expression I like. But anyway, we have much more in store over the next 2 days. We're moving into a different format. We're moving venues tomorrow. So again, it's East Union, and Francis gave the directions. There's other directions for you to get there. This will be the last time we meet as in plenary. So this is a large group. This is the last time we meet. And as a plenary, you've been absolutely fabulous. I know I'm between you and your cocktails, so I want to get through this, but it's certainly great that you've all stayed engaged, and these questions now just show how much we're all thinking and trying to wrap our brains around this very complex subject. I think I've got slides. Are they up? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I'll start off. I want to thank again our sponsors. This is Lindsay and Valmont from the irrigation industry. the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, the Nebraska Corn Board that Debbie's on, the Nebraska Soybean Board, and the Nebraska Cattlemen's Foundation, who, again, their generous support has helped us to be able to put on this event. Exhibitors, I hope you get a chance to go around the exhibitors. I went around them a couple of times and was able to talk to a number of them, and certainly we a great variety of the different folks working in this space and so forth. We were very fortunate to have a number of our board of directors here, and this is really important for us as an institute because it really reflects the support we've had in my time now. I'm coming up to the end of my 7th year. I think we've been through, there's been 4 university presidents, and each one of them has got water and food. They understand it. I think that's part of what's going with Nebraska. People here understand agriculture and they understand water. And the same, we have a lot of support from the state in terms of the involvement and people on our board. And then our international advisory panel, Martin is on our advisory panel. He's one of our founding advisory panel members. And you've met a number of these. Letitia Obeng wasn't able to be here. She is back in Ghana with her family this time. But again, these are folks that have really helped us reach out to networks like that you all are connected to. And so they're an important part of making this a truly international event. The external session reviewers, it seems so long ago that we started trying to develop this program, and all the session proposals that you all put in, and these were the people that really helped us put the program together. Some are in the audience, some couldn't make it, but it's certainly, they were very valuable. And we got over 100 session proposals. We were looking for about 20, and this is why we then ended up having to look at how we work the 3rd day of the various sessions. The conference planning support, where do I start? The staff, the team, all of them really, what happens is that across the Institute, across our colleagues across the university, everyone sort of engages and volunteers and helps in so many different ways. I would, and I've heard this, I've had many people tell us, but in terms of, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for naming names, but I want to say Francis, Amber, Ariana, sorry, and Janet, Tricia, others, but really these were the rocks. Oh, and Molly, sorry, Molly, our rock stars. And I've had many people come up to me and particularly compliment us on how well that team functioned. And to be honest, we couldn't put it on without that team working so well. Again, the volunteers and our vendors that are here in many capacities that have helped us put on this event. So that's my list through that. Again, I'm remiss if I don't thank you all for being here. Again, that's what makes this so special, is really this vibrant group of people that come at this issue from so many different perspectives. And I greatly appreciate that. I've been trying to get around and talk to as many people as I can, but I've still got quite a bit more work to do over the next day or so. I appreciate your participation. We've had an incredible set of sessions and side sessions. Again, you couldn't be at every breakout session. They will be on video, and I know that in some cases trying to make sure that the subjects didn't overlap was really challenging. So again, go back and look at that. Again, I would like to thank the Doherty Foundation and the University of Nebraska. I think that's me through the notes. And now I'm not standing, I'm in my last paragraph, so you can hold on a little bit longer here. So I would like you to join us for the final reception together. Sorry. You first need to grab some food and drink from the banquet hall. Join us. We start the reception at 5 o'clock. We're right on that time now in breakout room B. And then, I'm sorry, I don't understand this. Yeah. Yeah. So we basically, the food, we have to be directed to one room to do that, to access that, and then we meet back up here for the music and entertainment at 6 o'clock. My apologies for mixing that up. It's, too many words in my head. And with that, I meant to actually officially close. I know we've got tomorrow and the day after, but I will officially close the Water for Food conference because we're closing the plenary. And then please engage tomorrow, continue, and I will be around, and I hope to meet many more of you as we go through the next day and a half. Thank you very much. Sorry, Francis, I had read that.